I was, given so much authorship on screen and off screen, and I feel so grateful for that because
a sequence, like it starts with this.
Oh. I mean, if Colleen has her rights, I'll go anywhere. I'll follow this woman anywhere.
Y'all heard her.
So talk to me about how sometimes you were even the intimacy coordinator in some of those sexier scenes. Like we saw you.
That shouldn't be happening, by the way. I just want to be clear that you should not be the intimacy coordinator. You should definitely hire intimacy coordinators, which we did have.
Well,
thank
you
goodness.
were teaching Justin how to pull you in.
Where have you
loved
seen
that.
this?
I actually just saw it too. It was on Instagram yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Hi, friends. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Well, Blake Lively has now filed a motion to dismiss, and this motion to dismiss is a whole mess. And yesterday, Jed Wallace on the Baldoni side of things filed his own motion to dismiss. Today is actually the deadline for all of the responses, meaning either answers or motion to dismiss to all of the complaints that have been filed in this case. So far, we've had filings from Leslie Sloan, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and Jed Wallace. The Baldoni parties are, for all intents and purposes, yet to file, but they will be coming today. Blake Lively's entire motion to dismiss is trying to argue on this specific law within the state of California under the Civil Code, which bars civil litigation based upon claims of SH and SA. And she's trying to use this quote unquote Me Too law to get the case thrown out. And she's actually accusing him of breaking the law by filing this lawsuit against her. In the motion to dismiss, Blake Lively starts off by saying the Wayfarer party's vengeful and rambling lawsuit against Blake Lively is a profound abuse of the legal process that has no place in federal court. Interestingly, the lawyers who she's probably paying, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 an hour, could not actually capitalize the word federal, but I digress. The law prohibits weaponizing defamation lawsuits like this one to retaliate against individuals who have filed legal claims or have publicly spoken out about SH and retaliation. The right to seek legal redress and the right of the press to report on it are sacred principles that are protected by multiple privileges, including litigation and fair report privileges, which is absolute. She's also going to try to argue in her motion to dismiss that she should get the fair reporting privileges because she's apparently a journalist. But I want to be clear, this specific law she's going to try to fall on and use to give her a leg up to get the case dismissed. It can only be used in the event that that you're bringing valid claims that are made without malice. And so if his defense and if Justin Baldoni can actually prove that she created these allegations with malice, her entire argument for this motion to dismiss falls apart. And this is why in the same motion to dismiss, she tries to claim that he didn't properly argue malice in his first amended complaint. I know it's a lot, it's hard to digest, but the meat of it is that it's going to be a pretty high burden for her to get it thrown out at this point, because a judge is not going to want to decide on malice on a technicality. They're going to want to decide on malice through discovery. So just to remind you, the 12B motion to dismiss allows individuals to seek dismissal on the grounds of lack of subject matter jurisdiction, lack of personal jurisdiction, improper venue, insufficient process, insufficient service of process, failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. It doesn't have a valid claim, even if everything the plaintiff claims is true, and failure to join an indispensable party. So the only thing that she can ask here is that they throw it out based on failure to state a claim. So she has to base this off of all of this because she's not going to say they're not in the proper venue. She's not going to argue personal jurisdiction. It's all going to be about failure to state a claim. And then malice isn't a specific ground for a 12B motion. It can be relevant to certain contexts, such as defamation cases where actual malice, knowledge, or falsity or reckless disregard for the truth is a necessary element to prove the claim. Can a 12B motion be used to dismiss a claim based on a lack of malice? The answer is not directly. A 12B motion focuses on the form of the complaint and the jurisdictional procedural issues, not necessarily the merits of the case or the defendant's intent. So she's going to try to argue that she made these claims without malice, and that even if she did have malice, he didn't properly claim and state a claim for malice. I don't see this argument working. I believe that the judge isn't going to throw this out because ultimately this is such a high profile case. And if this got thrown out on a technicality like that and it went up to the appeals court and the appeals overturned it, then the judge is going to get, kind of like a scolding. And so they don't like to throw out cases like this on technicalities before it gets litigated. So all of this is a lot of just, I believe, her again using the court system in order to further slander Justin Baldoni. In order for her to get this one, she needs to prove that they didn't plead this correctly and they didn't put in all the elements in order to move the case forward. And she's going to try to rely on the fact that he wasn't able to determine the actual words that came out of her mouth that were unprivileged, because you get a privilege, which means she made claims that were made without malice. And she's going to try to say, you haven't identified what words I said that weren't unprivileged. You don't identify when I said it. But then at the same time, in another part of the lawsuit, she says, well, even if I did say it, you're barred by the statute of limitations, because she says Miss Lively published the same SH allegations on which the FAC's defamation claims rest well before January 17th of 2024, which she says is the 1-year statute of limitations. The FAC, for example, asserts that Miss Lively first conveyed her allegations via the 17-point protections for return to production on November 9th, 2023, which was shared with both Wayfarer and Sony, although they admit she had raised some concerns as far back as May 2023. The Wayfarer's parties believe the document to contain false accusations couched as demands that Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath engaged in inappropriate conduct during filming. And the FAC goes on to admit that during January 4th, 2024 all-hands meeting, she read aloud a list of grievances, including those in the protections for return to productions, as well as others, which again, they believed were fictional and had either never happened or had been grossly mischaracterized. The FAC thus confirms on its face that she published these allegations before January 17th, 2024. So I think it's really weird because her lawsuit for her motion to dismiss is alleging that publishing is actually orally speaking, but then Ryan's is you can't prove that I published because I didn't tell anyone publicly. But then she's actually saying that oral words are publishing. So when you start to read both of them, you realize how contradictory their arguments are and how frivolous these motions to dismiss are. And what I personally don't like is that they've even offered this as an explanation in their motion to dismiss, because what it does to me, and I'm not the judge, is that she spends a lot of time trying to say that they're illegally targeting her and this is against the law and she's entitled to special damages. But in the same document, she's saying, well, even if I did defame them and even if it is false, they're barred by the statute of limitations. And that doesn't really resonate with me as far as someone who is innocent. She should have just honestly left that all out, because plus, I'm pretty sure that his lawyers are going to argue that she didn't publish the statements to third parties when she said it to them, because a defamation statute would mean that you literally published it to someone other than the person involved in the situation. So by her bringing the claims to Justin himself isn't defamation. She has to release it to a third party, to someone outside of that group. And that they can't claim they know who that person is and when it was made, right? So this argument to me just really feels like a reach, like she's just trying to get this out on a technicality, but it also just, I think it sows seeds of doubt in the public because people will think, well, why are you saying this? If you stand firm in what you said, don't get it thrown out on a technicality. Don't even acknowledge that it could be true. Why would you do that? Because Jed Wallace, who filed a motion to dismiss, he did not use these kinds of arguments. He basically denied everything she did, and that he denied everything that she accused him of. He didn't even give or breathe life to the fact that it could be true. He just said he didn't do it. And here, there's that caveat of, well, even if I did, you can't sue me. And to be clear, the 17-point document wasn't about sexual harassment. In fact, what she published via the New York Times, they stated the 30 different points. They stated they had never seen that until the day it was published in the New York Times. This was never a document that they had been given. It was never a agreement that they had made. They never agreed to any of those demands. They never apologized. They never acknowledged they did those things. So she took this note that she made and she claims this is what she said to them at the January 4th, 2024 meeting. But even then, she didn't publish that to a third party and she didn't distribute it. And the single publication rule is really about publications on the internet and in media. And I have a hard time believing that it's going to get thrown out on a technicality here. So with Blake, what I'm seeing is just a lack of overwhelming accountability here. And she also tries to act like she didn't do anything wrong with the creative control and wants it thrown out again, claiming that they didn't properly claim and state the civil conspiracy. What I found the most bizarre is that this is how she frames her doing all of the editing. Moreover, the FAC does not allege what money or property Miss Lively received from the Wayfarer parties for supposedly extorting her way into editing a movie for no additional pay. She really looks at this as benevolence. Indeed, the FAC's self-defeating claim appears to be that Miss Lively bullied her way into doing more work than she was contractually obligated to do without additional compensation, while Wayfarer profited handsomely from the movie's blockbuster success. Notably, the Wayfarer parties did not pursue any action against her for supposed extortion until after she filed her legal claims, which speaks volumes. Which is, I don't think that they filed it in response. I think they were considering suing her because in a separate attachment to Jed Wallace's motion to dismiss, they mentioned that for more than a year, Steve Sarowitz had been pulling a lot of money out of his stocks, and he had liquidated about $100 million worth of stocks, and they had already been threatening to sue them in the summer. So it almost feels like they filed this lawsuit ahead of what they believed was coming towards them. I don't know if that makes sense. But they view this almost as though she volunteered to do this. They say the Wayfarer party's grievances seem to be that Miss Lively volunteered to do more than she wanted to do, which is plainly not a breach. So on the one hand, she claims that they're claiming she bullied her way into it. And on the other hand, they're claiming she just volunteered to do more. And I'll say this, they never claimed that she volunteered to do more. They didn't want her help. They didn't need her help. And she's going to fall on this concept that well, all I did was made your film more money than it could have ever made, as though all of her contributions are the reasons why it made money. The movie itself would have made a lot of money because of who Miss Colleen Hoover was and how big the book was. I think for people that have been following the story, one of the key interesting points has been, the New York Times and what she did with the New York Times. And she does address that by saying that on December 20th, 2024, she filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department The complaint alleges 10 claims under California law. She goes through those, what they are. On December 21st, 2024, The Times published an article, "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine," reporting on and drawing heavily from the claims and allegations set forth in the CRD complaint. Drawing heavily from, that's the point where, she's not noting that, she gave the Time thousands of pages of documents. The article is accompanied by a video in which a Times reporter summarizes the article, noting that it is based directly on the CRD complaint, and the video, together with the article, the Times publications. So she doesn't deny that she worked with the New York Times. She doesn't deny that she provided the information to the New York Times. Instead, she claims that she had a right to provide that information to the New York Times because she was speaking out against sexual harassment and retaliation. It didn't matter whether or not the claims were true. It didn't matter if what she was saying was done with malice. It was her right to make this visible and accuse him not only of the sexual harassment, but also of the retaliation. And I don't know, quite honestly, what's worse, but she justifies that it was her right to do that. And for the normal victim, I would say, sure, yep, that is your right. I think what Baldoni's side is going to argue is that she gave them it became unprivileged when she gave them a confidential document. What I truthfully was shocked the most out of all of this was that there was nothing she could point to what was in the smear campaign. What were the actual things that they said about her in the smear campaign that caused damage to her? What were the things that were said that didn't come out of the organic sphere? And when she sent a letter or a motion for a deposition to Jed Wallace, she kind of outlined some of the things that she believes were not valid criticisms and that were placed by Baldoni. Here's one. A few days later, on August 14th, Miss Abel stated, "I'll have our digital side boost this TikTok in the AM. In the reference TikTok, an individual who Miss Lively has never met, that Mr. Baldoni made Miss Lively uncomfortable and sad, calling it all nonsense." Now, to be clear, that could have been directly from the Daily Mail, which was planted by who? Leslie Sloan. And then on August 18th, it says, Mr. Baldoni circulated a TikTok video in which the poster repeated a misleading narrative that Miss Lively did not speak about domestic violence in any press interviews. She believes that they smeared her reputation by accusing her of not talking about domestic violence. She believes that's a planted narrative. Did you guys watch what she said on the press tour? Did she watch any of the TikToks that came out before the film? Did she read any of the comments that were in the Facebook groups or on Instagram or anywhere? Was she really this blind that she believed of all of the things they could have done to destroy her reputation? It was that she didn't talk about domestic violence because this is the actual reason she got canceled. She wants to pin on Justin Baldoni that her reputation is in the toilet because she didn't speak about domestic violence. And she wants to say it's not true. And Justin put that into the minds of everyone. And we wouldn't have thought that otherwise. This is, to me, kind of this idea that she really cannot take accountability for her own choices.
This isn't a film about domestic violence. This isn't a film about domestic violence. This isn't a film about domestic violence. It's a film that covers a lot of things, from first love to being an entrepreneur and opening your first shop and having all your dreams come true, to falling in love, to finding a new best friend, to domestic violence, which you don't hear all of those things in one place. But this isn't a story, this isn't a love story, this isn't a love triangle. This isn't a story, this isn't a love story, this isn't a love triangle, and this isn't a film about domestic violence.
That was in Copenhagen, Denmark, on the day of the international release of the film It Ends With Us. On the day it went public all across the world, she sat on a stage and said, this is not a film about domestic violence. Yet in court, she files a document that says Mr. Baldoni circulated a TikTok in which the poster repeated a misleading narrative that she did not speak about domestic violence in press interviews. Oh, she did. She said it was not a film about domestic violence. That's what she said. People were reacting to her words, and she truly is trying to pin this on him, because what else came out of that smear campaign that she thinks isn't organic? That she's rude, that she's a bully, that she's mean to her co-stars, that she's demanding, that she made a journalist cry, wanting to quit her job because she fat shamed the woman. And I think it's interesting that she would sort of fat shame the journalist and saying, yeah, congratulations on your bump, and then accuse him of fat shaming her. It's too much sometimes. There's so much more to comprehend here, but I wanted to just give you this sort of piece that she believes truly that he has broken the law. She wants it thrown out because he broke the law and it's illegal, and she has the right to say whatever she wants. She agrees and admits she colluded with the New York Times, but she says she can do that because it's her right. And you know what? Even if she did defame him, so what? It's barred by the statute of limitations, you guys. And she's really hurt and angry that the public was mad at her about not speaking about domestic violence. Blake Lively wants us to believe that she's a victim, but she doesn't want to acknowledge that victims are hurt by what she did. And it's the victims that rightfully spoke out in August of 2024 about the hurt they felt about the way that she promoted the film and how they didn't feel seen. And now she wants to say that those victims weren't real victims. Those were just plants by Justin Baldoni. She wants to erase the feelings of the victims who called her out and now wants to play the victim in court. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channels. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to turn the bells on by clicking on that bell and get the notifications. And tell me all the things below. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.